Okay, so you've been warned. Don't sue us if you've got permanent hearing damage.
Okay.
Hello, Dave!
Hello, Ollie!
Hello. Welcome to Not Sustainababble.
Oh, indeed. How's that?
Got any eardrums left?
Yeah, I think. Before you make any assumptions about our voices and faces, all that's happened is we have some guests.
Who are they, you may ask? Well, we have the one and only Sustainababble.
Woo! One and only what? One of only a pair of idiots. I think there are more idiots around that.
I was going to say, let's not put ourselves in an exclusive club where idiots are concerned. No, I can think of several other idiots.
So to anyone who doesn't know who Sustainababble are, they are a podcast who has over 200 episodes, and that's taken them 5 years.
6 years. Thank you very much.
Whoa.
6
Yeah.
long years.
Yeah, these pair of idiots, they talk about people on the planet and how we can help it.
Just before we start, I'm just going to say these are our opinions and Dave and Ollie's opinions, and they work for environmental charities, I think. So if there's anything we say that offends you, don't go and attack whoever they work for. Just come to us and we'll try and deal with it.
Very good.
Quite right. Well said.
Does that mean we should deliberately say things to offend people now?
Well, you can if you want to.
You can.
With complaints. Very good. What you don't know is that every other time I speak to Ol, I don't normally see Ol in a room. I normally see him in some sort of weird shed that he does his recording in, which for some reason, just because it's you, for some reason he's decided to look presentable, which just doesn't normally happen.
Yeah, Dave sent me a
Fancy.
message saying something very rude and offensive about my appearance and how I needed to improve it. But yeah, normally I'm in a shed at the end of the garden so that my shouting doesn't wake up my children. But we have timed this absolutely brilliantly so that in theory my children will be shouting at each other while they have their tea while I'm doing this. So it should all be fine.
Yeah, so we're going to be asking you some questions about the planet and podcasting, and we're going to ask you to pronounce some Welsh words because we speak Welsh.
Well, Ollie already can practically speak Welsh, so this will be a stroke in the park for him. But sorry, Dave.
Oh no, that's fine. I'm quite happy for Ol to give us his best. Well,
Oh, I don't think I need to do
exciting.
that. Don't think. Yeah. Well, okay. I look forward to this. This is going to be excellent.
Yes.
But firstly, we're going to ask you some questions. So the first question is, what are the issues that worry you the most about the future of the planet?
Ol.
Ooh. What worries me the most? Well, the honest truth is, quite a lot of things worry me. And I sometimes go a bit funny when I think about them all too hard. But I suppose the thing that worries me the most about the future of the planet is people not kind of working together to try and sort it all out, and instead getting increasingly divided and angry and all the bad things that come along with that. Because things are going to change. Can't do anything about that. But I think the real kind of question is, how are we going to respond to that? And we can respond to that with great compassion and empathy, and we can come together and achieve really great things, or we might go the other way. And I think that's what worries me most, is the prospect of going the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, same.
I think that things are going to get worse before they get better, right? I think that's kind of, things are getting worse. There's some getting worse baked in, and I'm worried that things get a lot worse before they get better.
Baked in, Dave. Baked in. That's a klaxonable.
Don't you?
phrase.
You can't klaxon me because you don't have the klaxon.
If people realise when they get really bad that, oh God, we should have done something when people were actually telling us to. It's like they're like, not everyone, but a lot of people will regret when people start to drown and, fires.
Yeah,
more
that's the
frequent.
annoying part about it all.
Yeah, and I think that also that what has to change is the way that humans think about the planet as a thing. So I think we're pretty good at thinking of ourselves as kind of separate from it, and that climate change is some sort of technical problem that we just need to manage, and it is to an extent. But actually, the only way that 8, 10 billion people are going to live on Earth in a sustainable way is if we understand in our hearts as well as in our heads that we're part of nature and we kind of need to live like that. I think, and that's what makes me hopeful is I think we will realise that. I'm worried that we won't realise it in time.
So, what are your views on climate change?
Bad thing.
Love it.
Oh, controversial.
No,
Love a bit of sarcasm.
I don't think it's great. Sorry, Dave, I jumped in. You were going to
I just
say
said it was.
something.
I said it was a bad thing. I didn't realise you had such a different opinion.
No, I don't have a different opinion. I think it's a bad thing too. I was thinking about this earlier, and I think really it's the thing which is going to define all of our lives on this call and everyone who's listening and watching, because it's not going away. So both how it unfolds in terms of the planet warming up and all of the impacts that will define our lives, but also what we all do to respond to it will define our lives. And I think it's the bigness of it. That's what I think about it. It's just lots of other people in previous eras have been worried about things in a really big way, but they've been things that kind of are temporary or turn out to be temporary. But there's no way this is turning out to be temporary. So I think that's what I think about climate change. I think it's here forever. As long as we're alive, climate change in some way is going to be a thing.
So who's your favorite environmental hero or activist?
Oh, Ol's my favourite environmental hero.
Thanks, Dave.
With you, I can be sad with you.
Yeah, no,
I don't believe you for a
it's
second,
not
but
true,
thank
though,
you.
is it? That's not. That's not true. That's not a true thing. It's. I mean, my brain is saying don't say the obvious thing. The obvious thing is Greta, right? And the reason I think that is because of the transformative effect that she has had. No, not that she has had by herself. Let's sort of be fair about it, but that she symbolizes what has been a really rapid change in the debate about climate change over the last couple of years. Like, she has been the figurehead of a kind of moving of climate change from being something people didn't talk about to something people talk about, and she's played a huge role in that, and she's been fearless, and she's just said it like it is, and she's talked to adults and said this is all your fault and you've got to sort it out, and words to that effect. I can't nobody else is jumping into my brain really as being better than that apart from Mole, which, as we know, I don't really think.
No, you
No.
don't. Definitely Greta as well, but I think really it's tricky to have heroes, isn't it? Because there are lots of people doing great things, and a lot of the really great stuff is done quietly behind the scenes by ordinary people. So it's a strange. It's not really like sport in like where you've got your favorite footballer from your favorite team or whatever, favorite rugby player. But I think that in the UK, I think Caroline Lucas has been pretty amazing for a very long time. So she's the Green MP for Brighton and has been the only Green MP for what, 10 years now? I think she got elected in 2010. And the reason I think she's a hero is not only because she's brilliant at banging on about the environment, but she understands that this is all linked to lots of other social causes that need banging on about as well. And she's fearless and she's relentless and she's compassionate, and her energy never seems to diminish. So I think she's kind of pretty close to who I would have as a hero.
Yeah, we talked to someone a few episodes ago about kind of a bit about environmental heroes, about activists and sort of, and one of the things that she said in that, Jill Coombs it was, one of the things she said was, for every one person, something like this anyway, for every one person who is the well-known activist, there's 99 people underneath them who have made the meetings work and done the briefings and made the tea, and that she was sort of saying it's wrong to think that everyone has to be a hero. That actually heroism is quite small a lot of the time. It's being part of something, you know. But yeah, Greta.
This is quite a weird question, but if you had to tell a small, very small child or a conspiracy theorist what climate change is and what the future holds for them and us, what would you tell them?
Gotta just say, I'm a massive fan of you, like having the same line of argument for a very small child and a conspiracy theorist. I think that's great. I love that. Ol, you've got very small children. How would you talk to baby Ol about it?
I would say um, climate change is the reason you are definitely going to go to bed now, and you are going to get in that bath that you don't want to get in, and you are going to eat your broccoli. That's what I would say to my very small children. I guess I don't know. It's a very good question, because one of the things that people who work on this stuff are very bad at is explaining climate change in simple, understandable terms. And it's a complicated thing. So I suppose it's kind of fair enough. But yeah, I guess I would I would say to a small child, I would say the planet is getting warmer, and that could make it really hard for people and animals to carry on living the way they live. And we need to try and stop that. And there are ways we can try and stop that, but it's going to be tricky. To a conspiracy theorist, yeah, probably. I guess you probably say the same thing. I mean, we've talked about this a bit on our podcast. Like, what is there any point talking to conspiracy theorists? Is there any point talking to climate deniers about climate change? Because there's such a great big job that people like you and people listening need to do in terms of talking to people who do think it's a problem and getting them to act and getting them to join in with movements. That probably our energy is best spent talking to people who are likely to be won over, and possibly our energy isn't very well spent on talking to people who have already decided that it's a conspiracy or that it's just not true. And to be honest, us telling them that it isn't a conspiracy isn't going to change their mind.
Yeah, that's the thing. And that's, if you talk to a kid, I think it's quite easy to say something like, you know, like when you're in a bed under a duvet, you get hot, and then if you take that duvet away, you get less hot. And I think that's just people instinctively get the idea that if there's something kind of thicker than there was, then things get warmer, right? And that's basically what we're doing to the atmosphere.
I'm thicker than I was. I used to be less thick, but now I'm much thicker than I was.
Would you say you're warmer than you were?
No, I don't think I'm warmer. No.
You must be a conspiracy theorist then. But I think conspiracy theorists won't. They don't work like that. They look for a reason to disbelieve rather than to believe, to not hold facts rather than hold them. So I agree with. I don't bother. Like, spend your energy talking to 100 people who'll listen to you rather than one who won't. That's what I reckon.
Because children don't need a reason for every point you say, but conspiracy theories need a valid fact or point about it, or they will not. Well, they'll never believe you, if I'm honest, because someone's taught them, probably Trump or someone, to think it's not real. So, like, you can't really change a conspiracy theorist's mind, but you can to a small child.
Yeah, so what do you think more people should start doing to help the planet?
Sitting inside in the dark, not eating any food or having any fun, and oh no, wait a minute, no, that's not right, is it? I think it. So I don't think there's one answer to this. I actually honestly believe this. We get asked this quite a lot, and I think it depends who you are. And if you are, for example, which none of us are, I don't think, in charge of a major multinational food company, then what you can do about climate change is different to what you can do if you're a bunch of podcasters like us. We are doing on this podcast the thing that I want everyone to do more than anything else, which is talk about it, and talk about it in a way that makes it not seem weird and not seem and makes it seem, what's the word I'm after all? You know, that word, and makes it seem just part of normal conversation and common sense. And that's what started to happen, which I think is why I'm optimistic about climate change, is people are talking about it, you know. And it's younger people in particular who are talking about it definitely differently to the way that Ol and my generation talked about it. But you're starting to see my dad, who's in his 70s, like he is now picking up. He's never been interested in climate change, despite me hoping that he might be. But he's starting to pick up just from seeing it on the news and seeing it talked about. He thinks it's his own idea that climate change is a thing he should care about, and that's because everyone's talking about it. If you're old enough to have a vote, you should vote for the right people. That's up to you who you think the right people are. If you've got money somewhere, you could put it in the right thing, but mostly just talk about this, in a kind of normal way. That's what I think. What do you think, Ol?
I agree with all of that. And yeah, on that first point about kind of recognizing what power you have and what power the people you're talking to have, that's very important. And one of the things that people as old as Dave and to an extent me remember the look at your face. You always get so upset when I call you old, but you are old.
I'm never going to be any younger than I am right now. So
That's true. That is true. But people will remember that when climate change first became a thing that was kind of widely talked about, the oil companies and the big companies who knew that they were causing it were very quick to try and get everyone talking about what they could do in their own individual lives. And the whole idea of like a carbon footprint for each person was in many ways kind of cooked up by these huge companies who've got bigger carbon footprints than all of us put together ever will have. So it's a bit of a trap that they've set for us to kind of desperately worry about what we can all do as individuals when, there are massive things that these companies and governments could be doing on our behalf to make our choices easier. Because that's the point. Like, if you go into a shop and you're faced with 7 products that are cheap and very disposable and one product which is expensive and reusable, well, there's a lot going on there that's stopping you doing the right thing for the environment. So whereas the companies could make cheap things that are reusable, this is a very long-winded answer of basically saying companies are a bunch of nasty people, and not always, but the big ones can be, and we should look to them to do more than us, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Before COVID, you went to quite a lot of protests and interviewed people in the midst of the things. How did you feel when you were there? Was it like nerve-wracking or exciting or very scary?
Well, I should say I felt fine doing it, and then I felt very unfine when I got home from the protest and I listened to the audio that I'd recorded, which in fact I hadn't recorded. I'd managed to had a new bit of audio kit, and I'd managed to press stop when I meant to press start and start when I meant to press stop. So the only audio I actually recorded was accidental bits when I didn't mean to. That said, I now know how the buttons work and I won't do that again. So that's fine. I think it's great. I think it's really, really good. I was really scared though. The first time me and Ol, we went to the climate march in episode, crikey Moses, 33 or 4, I think, Ol. So that long ago, 2016 it was.
Early 2016, yeah.
And it was scary, but people love talking. People are on a march. By definition, they're probably up for talking about climate change, right? And everyone's got a different reason to be there. The first guy we spoke to, do you remember, Ollie, was this guy who was like, I don't really care about climate change. I just thought there was a protest going on and I thought I'd get involved with it. Do you remember that guy?
I don't remember that. No, that's amazing. Really? Is that what happened?
Yeah, and then we talked to loads of kind of what you might think of, more stereotypical greeny type crusty people singing Kumbaya and wheeling green and pink bicycles about. But just mostly just normal people, all of whom people's motivations are different, right? People go to protest. Some people go because they love protesting and they'll protest anything. For other people, it's their burning thing. Other people are just intrigued and they want to go and make a difference and want to be seen, or it's a friendship thing or a group thing. And I was scared, but then actually became really inspired. They're some of our best episodes, I think, where we have gone and sometimes recorded conversations with people.
Yeah. So as we've said already, they've made over 200 episodes, so how do you keep determined to do it every week?
Oh, would you like to answer this question?
Otherwise, I just wouldn't talk to anyone. Dave is my only outlet, which I know is a terrible state of affairs. The thing that, to be a bit more serious, the thing that keeps me going is the the feedback that we get. So we started the podcast, because we thought it was a thing that would be fun to do, and we felt like we couldn't quite be as sort of silly or as honest about some of these things that we worked on all of the time. But since getting it going and getting lots of listeners coming to us, we've realized that there are loads and loads of people who take something meaningful from it. Sometimes they just take something from us chatting, or sometimes they take something from the people that we interview and speak to. And every time we get an email coming in saying, this was actually, really moving, or this has made me do something different in my life, really positive, or I really kind of recognize what you were saying about this particular thing and how you felt, like that just makes me feel like, yeah, we're doing something which is useful to somebody somewhere, and in fact quite a lot of people somewhere, and that's a really nice thing to feel like you're doing. So that's the honest answer, I think.
And I think the other thing is that we started the podcast because we didn't feel that we had a place really to talk about climate and environment in a kind of funny way where you can be honest about what you think, because your jobs require you to be very serious and sensible and right about stuff. And I still don't know what I think about loads of stuff. And every time a new thing happens, I'm still not sure what I think. And the way I generally work out what I think is every week on a Thursday evening, Ol and I talk about it. And I think a thing, Ol tells me I'm wrong, and I end up thinking what Ol thinks. Basically what I think. And it's the best way to actually get your head around an issue and learn it. And it's not going to stop. There's not going to be, going to stop being interesting things to hear about. I think the other thing is, Ol, like, we both have moments of being a bit gloomy, don't we, about the whole environment thing when it gets a bit much sometimes. And I find it's could be really, really good for the soul just to have a chat and admit that you feel a bit gloomy, and then have a laugh and call a company a rude word, and then feel better about it.
As you said, you love the feedback. The reason we started the podcast about the environment, because we all listened to your podcast and were like, oh, we should do something like this, because me and Joe had a podcast in the summer that, to be honest, was not that good. So we and Travan had one as well, and we were like, oh, we should make one together about the planet. And we just started listening to you and be like, we should do something like they're doing, because it's teached us so much about the environment. Well, usually teaches us about the environment, and
there's a compliment in there somewhere. There's a compliment there. I'm trying to find it.
Why did you start a podcast on the planet? And back then, podcasts were just starting to become quite a big thing, and you could have chosen any topic, and you chose that. Why?
Well, the planet's one of the few things I feel like I know something about. I mean, not very much, but something about.
Cambridge United, you know about
I could have done a podcast about Cambridge United, yeah, and well, specifically that would have been Cambridge United in like the 90s, so it's quite a niche podcast. Well, yeah, I mean, it helps to really care about it, and like I do find it fascinating, and it's the thing which I work on all day, and it's the thing which I talk to my partner about, and a lot of my friends are involved in all of this, and so it is the thing that kind of, I don't know, in a strange way, it sort of dominates my life, and feels good to talk about it. I think that's it, really.
Yeah, I think that why a podcast in particular is, well, from my perspective, I really like talking about stuff and people listening to me. It makes me feel good. I like it. I wish.
Do you like the way people can't respond as well? So you can just talk and no one can argue.
No one except you, and I can just shout at you.
You could just mute me.
And look, I'd love to say that it was a lot more complicated than that, but one of the reasons that I was keen to do a podcast is so that I could say stuff and people would listen, and my ego would go, brilliant, look how great you are. You know, that is honestly true. I wish it wasn't, but it is.
Commendable honesty. But you need to see someone about your ego.
Well, I suppose you only did it. I suppose you wanted to talk to the nation every week on a Thursday. That's why, just as a pure act of public service, was it?
I have no ego at all. I've never been known to show off, or put myself towards the limelight. No, of course there is. Of course there's a lot. It's brilliant fun to show off and to kind of be silly about it. Well, it was quite nerve-wracking at the beginning because we didn't know whether we were going to get in trouble with the people that we worked for when we started it.
Or
'Cause
the
we didn't
law.
we didn't really ask their permission. We weren't sure that we needed to, but we didn't really want to find out either. Um, so we were a bit scared. And we were also, I suppose, a bit scared that what we might say might be met with people going, "You're talking rubbish," or "You're being offensive," or, you know, why do you think you've got the right to bang on about this? So it was a bit nerve-wracking at the beginning, but I think that since we've kind of become more relaxed about the fact that by and large people are quite happy that we're doing it, it's it's just become really great fun. And I will never pass up the opportunity to show off to an audience. That is in my DNA.
So now we're talking about the subject. When you just started the podcast, what do you think you could have done better?
I had someone else to do it with.
You're so predictable.
Who was punctual, and
I was here for this one. I was on time for this one.
you were early. You were early for this one. No, it was good. Honestly, there are things we could have done better, but I think we all went on a little podcasty trainee course thing before we started, and the advice he was given on that really stuck with us. And you guys should, I think, hear this advice as well because it's really good. And the advice was basically, don't overthink it. Have a plan, know what you're doing, but don't overthink it. Just start and keep going. And accept that you're going to be rubbish when you start doing this for the first time, and you're going to listen back to your early episodes after 6 months, a year, and you're going to go, it's going to be awful. And if you haven't done that, it probably means you waited too long to start in the first place. So there was all sorts of stuff at the start. We were a bit a little bit too policy focused and not really talking enough about the stuff people really care about, but we learned that as we went on. I wouldn't change it. We worked all of that out. We worked out what people liked. We relaxed. I mean, when we listen back to those early episodes, it makes me want to put my head into a bucket of sand. It's absolutely, we're just like, hello Ollie, hello Dave, yes, well here's the thing about the planet, oh dear, that sounds awful. But I couldn't have done it any differently to that at the start because I didn't know how to do it differently. So we had to kind of work that out as we went along.
Because when me and Joe did a podcast, one of our friends shared it around with the class.
Oh
People were listening to it in the class, and we were like, "Oh God, why did we put that? Or why did we do that to ourselves?" And we're like, I see what you mean. Like, we're gonna look back in how many months we're gonna probably. Well, I don't know if we're gonna even be able to carry on for 6 months, but hopefully.
Yeah, looking back at my podcast too is crazy.
We're gonna be like, oh gosh, we didn't know anything. Like, we should have like done this or this, and yeah.
Well, imagine what it's going to be like when you're Prime Minister and you look back at it. That's going to be fun.
I wish.
No, but I do think that's really important. I think, like, if you're making a podcast, people will listen to it, and they may be people who are your friends, and very quickly learning to get over kind of being cringy about that is part of the point, I think. And it's good that you did a podcast and you thought it wasn't good enough, so you're doing another one. That's a good thing. That's the point.
Yeah.
Like, you're learning. That's cool. That's what we did.
Yeah.
Still doing, I think.
Definitely. And, podcasting is changing. And when you listen to other people doing podcasts, they do things a bit differently now, and you change along with it. So it's just a question of keeping going, really. I'd really encourage you to just keep going. The other really key bit of advice we got given was that if once you've kind of found people who want to listen to your stuff, they will generally expect it to come out like at the same time every week, because that sort of fits how they fit it into their lives and stuff. So being sort of treating it like an actual radio show or an actual telly program, and like always putting it out at the same time each week or each fortnight, however often you do it.
Or if you
That
can't, tell your audience you won't be around next week. You know that.
yeah, and sort of making sure that people come to think of you as dependable and reliable, and that was a good piece of advice, I think.
So how's being dependable and reliable going for you all? All right.
Well, it's a work in progress, isn't it? And
204 episodes, and
sometimes I'm more dependable and reliable than others, but I
that's
always
not how,
strive
that's not
to be
how
better.
reliability works, is it? You're like a wind turbine. You're intermittent.
Yeah.
So how did you two meet?
Tinder.
we're yes, that park bench that we were both fighting over. We were working in the same place. We both worked for the same environmental organisation for quite a long time. And in fact, I don't know if you remember, Dave, but on my induction day, so like when I started, this was back in 2008, I got sent off to like a kind of an induction day for new starters, where they said, look, this is the planet and we're trying to save it, and here's a PowerPoint and here's some vegan food. And at the same induction day was Dave, who was coming back to work there for the second time, because he'd already worked there, had left, and then was coming back.
Huh.
And I can't even remember what you said, but you said something nice to me. I remember thinking, he's nice. Or just the fact that he'd come over and talk to me. I thought that was nice. And then he went and did like clever, important work, while I went and did very unimportant, not very clever work. And I thought, oh gosh, he's one of those clever people. And then slowly I realized he's not that clever. And I became quite good at pretending to be clever. And so we ended up doing sort of similar things in that environmental charity. And then we went to the pub a lot. And then in one of those times at the pub, we said, we should do a podcast. And then here we are.
If, for example, us or someone else like us, if they wanted to start a podcast, what advice would you give them?
I think there's only really a few bits of advice. Firstly, understand what the point of your podcast is. Don't sit down and do like a 200 episode plan, but understand what you are, kind of what, I don't know, maybe the best way of describing it is understand what your own joke is. All share the same joke, even if it's not funny, but all kind of understand the point of the podcast. Do you know what I mean? Like, what is it that you are adding to the something like 500,000 podcasts in the English language in the world? Like, what is it you're adding? And try to kind of test whether you do some early testing with that. So do a trial episode and play it to some people. Oh, you guys did that by proxy, in that you did another podcast first, so you kind of had a sense of what worked and what didn't. But mostly just start it. Like, it's so easy to do, as you guys are finding, and we're finding. You can record it, have it out on the internet in 2 hours. People in Kazakhstan can be listening to you. That's amazing. Keep going, and accept also, and the other bit of advice I think is, it took us about a year till anyone noticed we existed at all, and it was only, I think we got very luckily we got an interview with that Chris Packham off of telly, and that was really lucky. He very kindly noticed a little plaintive, will anyone come on our podcast type thing. And at that point people started to notice. But accept that there are a vast amount of podcasts, accept that you probably take a bit of time to get good at it, and just treat it as a learning thing. And if it's good enough, people will listen, people will come, and over that time you will get much better at it. So I say to anyone, just kind of start. Yeah, what do you reckon, Noel?
Yeah, I agree with that. Just starting is definitely the most important thing. And try to do it on something that you love or you care about, because I think a podcast that if you're talking about something that is interesting but not something that really kind of fires you up, you're going to run out of steam, because there's only so long you can sustain that. And also it probably won't be that great to listen to, because people can tell when you're bored by something, or you're just not that into it, and it sounds like you're doing your work or your homework rather than doing that thing that you desperately want to talk about. So yeah, just stick to the stuff that you're really curious about and really passionate about. I think that would be another tip.
Yeah, so to finish, we're going to ask you to pronounce some Welsh words.
Da iawn, boys bach.
Oh,
Yeah.
God. Dave, can you do all of them, please?
No, I really think you should go first.
Okay, right. The first word is ailgylchu, which means recycle.
Sorry, what was
So
the word?
I'll say it again. Ailgylchu.
Bless you. What's the word?
Ailgylchu.
Ailgylchu.
Close enough. At least like
That's quite good.
Like
said
they're really
like normal people wouldn't be able to say that, and it included this and which is extra points, I would say.
Oh, there we go. I'm going to retire here then.
So the second word is amgylchedd, which means environment.
Amgylchedd? Is that right?
Amgylchedd.
I can't. Amgylchedd. I don't know. I can do the bit. How about that? Amgylchedd.
That's pretty good.
Like
That's quite good.
Ollie.
for a third word, it's quite a harder one. Cynhesu byd eang, which means climate change.
3
Or
words.
global warming. Well, yeah, but you wouldn't say climate. Then 5 minutes into change. Like it's one big word with 3 words together.
Great.
Say it again.
Cynhesu byd eang.
Off you go.
One more time.
Cynhesu byd eang.
Cynhesu byd eang.
Yes.
Yay,
That's quite good.
Yeah. Have some of that.
I sincerely hope you've insulted people somewhere.
Oh yeah, hang on a minute. Yeah, they're just telling us rude words in Welsh, aren't they? These aren't.
No,
That wasn't
no,
climate
I know
change
what's
at all.
Oh, right. Okay. And the last one.
You
This
probably
is just
saw this
more of a
coming.
joke. I'm not really expecting any of you to do this, but this is a place in Wales, and it's the longest word I think in Europe, something like that.
It's the train station one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just town, actually.
Yeah.
Oh.
Llanfair Pwsgwyngyll Gogerwch yn job westan seilio go.
Show off.
Oh, do you want to have a go at that?
No.
Okay.
Dave, you do it.
Anfa Pwsgwyngyll Gogerwch yn job westan seilio go.
Very good.
Come on,
That
was
Ollie.
brilliant.
Okay.
Genuinely.
How do you like them apples?
As you know, I find it very hard to compliment you, but that was actually good.
Yeah.
Jochen Rad.
Crystal.
So
That's shut you up, innit? Shut up.
So thank you so much for being on this podcast. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. It's been hugely fun.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Thanks for having us on.
If you haven't already listened to Sustainababble, I would highly recommend going to listen to them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and I think, yeah. And if you want to shout out any social media?
Oh, I'm not very good at this.
No, Dave, you're banned from doing this because you get it wrong. You can find us on Twitter at the Babble Wagon. You can just search for Sustainababble on Facebook. And if you, I don't know, if you wanted to send us an email, I don't know why you would, you haven't heard it yet. But if you want to send us an email, you can email us at hello@sustainababble.fish.
Anyway, so about everything, thank you for listening to the 10th episode of State to Nature podcast, and we hope to see you next time.
Bye.
Bye!
Bye!
Boom.
I'm on vacation every single day 'cause I love my occupation.